Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Microsoft Dynamics Tips and Tricks. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will answer questions throughout the presentation and will also follow up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. We have Jeff Smith, who is a Senior Client Success Manager here at Socius. So at this point, Jeff, I believe we're ready to transition over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lindsay. And thanks to everyone on the line. We certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to visit with us. Hopefully you'll find that this session is useful and can provide you with some value moving forward as you use Dynamics GP. Our objective today is to provide you with some tips and tricks to help you maximize the value you get from your investment in Dynamics GP, and really by providing you two different values. One is better information, one is streamlined processes. And so hopefully you'll see as we go through this presentation that there are ways that we can do both of those things using GP. We're going to break the session into four categories. We're going to talk about reporting and inquiries. We're going to then talk about system issues. We'll then jump into financial, and we'll finish up with distribution. The way we'd like to do this is we're going to cover each section, and then you'll have an opportunity at the end of each section to ask some questions. If there are questions that are going to take a long time to answer or would require some research, we will do that research, and we'll get back to you with answers on that. As we only have an hour and a lot of things to cover. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on, and we'll start with reporting and inquiries. And I'm going to exit out of the PowerPoint and move on with our presentation strictly using Dynamics GP. Now, during this presentation, I'm going to have two different versions of GP going, and there's some technical reasons behind that, but what I want, they're both Dynamics GP 2016 Release 2. Our first topic in reporting and inquiries is being able to create and modify smart lists from Smart List Designer. And so I'm going to start off here by using Dynamics GP. I'm going to select Smart List from the Dynamics GP menu. There we go. Sorry about that. The system is a little slow right now, but we'll push through. All right. So a couple versions back, Microsoft really changed the character of Smart List to Smart List Designer, which gave us the capability of not only using the Smart Lists that already existed, but to create our own new ones. And so a couple things that we're going to be able to do with Smart List Designer that we couldn't do before is we can create our own brand new Smart List. We have the ability to combine multiple tables, and by combining those tables, we can create different Smart Lists that include additional information. And then we also have the ability to read data out of SQL views, which many people will use to combine data from multiple solutions as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, start in our sales area. And I am going to just show you one that I've already created, and then we'll kind of go through how it was set up. So what we have here is Illinois customers. And what this is this is a smart list that provides us all the customers that exist in Illinois. And we have, but not only who exists in Illinois, but also their open documents. So you can see that Advanced Paper Company has several transactions here, 6 it looks like, And then you can see the document date, the document number, etc. And for any of you that use Dynamics GP today, you know that in this case, the receivables module is broken out into two different there's two different tables, or there's multiple tables, and in this case, this report is pulling data from the AR open file as well as from the RM customer master file. So what we can do is we can come in here and we can modify, and you can see that when we created this report, you'll notice that the Smart List Designer has a list of all of the tables in databases that are available for us to look at. And now the receivables information comes from the Microsoft Dynamics GP database, and you can see that we have financial, sales, and so forth. And then within each of those individual module groups, then each of the individual tables will exist. And so over here, you're going to notice that we have the individual fields that we're going to use that come from the RM customer master as well as from the RM open file. Now, prior to Smart List Designer, we were not going to be able to provide that kind of information. So here you can see on sales, and then underneath sales are all of the individual tables that we were talking about. And you can see that there's quite a few of them. Here is the RM customer master, and here is the RM open file. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to connect those two by picking the RM customer master, by selecting the customer number, by joining them together, and you can see then I can select the RM open and then match that with the customer number. And because they have a corresponding field that connects them, then I can pull data from both of those individual tables into one smart list. So this functionality gives me lots of flexibility. All right, so I'm going to click OK on that. The other thing that we talked about was the ability to then pull data out of views. And so we have the ability to do that as well. And so under my sales area as well, I could create data that comes from different places, and including a SQL view. So hopefully that makes sense what we're doing here. So that's the first thing I wanted to make sure you knew. And the reason this is important is in the past, what we would have done is we would have purchased a tool called Smart List Builder. Smart List Builder is an ISV product that you have to pay extra for to do this kind of work. Now, Smart List Builder still exists and has even additional functionality. So I think it would be important if this is something that you're trying to do and you're not able to do today, to have a discussion with your associates consultant and get their advice on, first of all, what you want to do, and then what is the best tool to do that. So that's our first step. All right, so the next thing under reporting that I wanted to spend some time on really revolves around the ability to pull reports from using what's called SQL reporting services and then also Excel. So Dynamics GP comes equipped with a variety of reports that are outside of the normal Dynamics GP reports. And in fact, there are 250 of those reports that actually exist inside of SQL reporting services. And then there are another 200 plus that are Excel reports. So I wanted to give you some examples of those. So first thing I wanted to do is start off with purchasing. So here we are at our home page. If I select purchasing, you'll notice up here in the top left-hand side corner, we're going to have a variety of things. So this is what's called a navigation list. And included in that navigation list are Excel reports and reporting services reports. So when your Dynamics GP gets installed and deployed, these can be deployed along with them. And I know that our installers here at Socius would typically, unless you say otherwise, would deploy these reports. Now, the question is whether you use them or not. So as you follow this and look in your system, if you don't see these, certainly let us know and we can make sure they're available to you. So if I click on reporting services, what this is going to do is this is going to give me a list of SQL reporting services reports that are available to you in Dynamics GP. And you're going to have some great flexibility in regards to these reports. I thought I might pick one of these reports that might strike a tone with many of you, is the historical age trial balance report. So first of all, I have the ability to bring up more than one report at a time. You'll see that they're all listed here. Also, then I can print that report. So if I select multiple, I can print them both. Also, if I wanted to view the report, I simply can click View. And what you're going to see is you're going to see the report is available to you right here. So if I wanted to use our sample data, let's do Fabricam data. I'm going to say that I want print the aging as of, let's make it 4/30/2017. And I'm going to select transactions by GL posting date. This may look familiar to you for those who use this. And I can then say that I want to see this report all the way through April 30th. And we'll select that right here. So it's really set up just like the out-of-the-box GP report, only it gives you more flexibility. So here you can see all of my choices in regards to zero balance, activity, fully paid documents, etc. Now from here, I have the ability to then just view that report. So what's going to happen is that report's going to come up, and it's going to have all of the information about all of the open transactions that exist for the vendors that I have. Now, I could have selected a range of vendors by name, by class, etc. Now, one of the things that's really nice about these reports is that I have the ability from here to actually output this report very nicely into Excel. So if you've ever had an auditor ask you about taking a report and giving it to them in Excel, this simply would allow us to do that. So now I can launch Excel, and I can open up Excel, and now my report will actually be embedded in Excel. So you can see here that now my aging report's in Excel. So if I need to clean out headings and things like that, I can do it, and now I have all the raw data that an auditor might want to look at. So this is just a really nice option in regards to being able to produce reports. Now, the other thing that's really nice about these SQL reporting services reports is that you don't have to be a GP user to get to them. So I actually have the ability here to go out to my browser, and I can select, now I happen to have this, I thought I had it set up, let's see. Here we go. So if I go out to my web browser, I can have people that are outside of Dynamics GP that can actually have access to these reports as well. So it takes just a moment for this to come up, but what you're going to see now is here's a breakdown of all the different reports I have in SQL reporting services. You can see here that I have my Fabricam company, and inside of that I have all of my different module groups, just like I was showing you inside of GP. So if I select purchasing, there's my historical age trial balance, and I can access that report directly from the web versus having to go into Dynamics GP. So if you have users that need access to reports, and you can control this by security, then you also can use SQL reporting services, these pre-built reports, or you can create your own and have people access them this way. Okay, so that will be the next thing that I wanted to show you. Now let's go back, and the other thing that we have, as we talked about, was Excel reports. So here you can see these Excel reports also exist inside of the solution, and they're accessible via this navigation list, just like we talked about before with the SQL Reporting Services reports. And I can scroll down and I can get any of the reports that I want. So as I scroll down toward the bottom here, I know that I have one, and these are all pre-built reports. So I think I have one in here somewhere that is a purchasing dashboard. And this one actually comes out of the box, but you can see things like open purchase orders, receiving documents, all kinds of different reports that you would normally be able to get out of GP. And then I can click View, and this will actually launch this report directly out of Excel. So another example of pre-built reports that use tools that you already use, like Excel, that you may not even know that you own, but you certainly have the ability to use them. And so, and because they're pre-built, it's kind of nice. The other thing is every time you launch this spreadsheet, it's going to, and you don't have to be a GP user for this either, that it's going to bring up the most recent data. So hopefully this could provide a great value for you as well as you look for good ways to get data out of your system. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to my next choice. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to use a tool called Power BI. You hear us talk about this a lot, but this is a tool that is not included with your Dynamics GP, but it interfaces with your Dynamics GP. And to the point where in the next release of Dynamics GP, which will be GP 2018, Power BI will have a content pack for GP, which means that on your home page you can actually have Power BI dashboards embedded in your home page. And so, but the nice thing about Power BI is that it's very interactive, and Socius has actually gotten very involved with Power BI to the point where we've actually started to we've created our own analytics, as you can see here, Socius Analytics. So we've created some dashboards that we think a lot of clients would need, and we offer those up. Now, Power BI is a subscription-based solution. It's cloud-based, but it's very affordable in that it is $9.99 per month per user. And so it can very easily, whether your Dynamics GP is on site or in the cloud or on premise, you'll have the ability to provide this type of dashboard for your for anyone in the organization. Now, here's the other good thing about these reports. First, they're interactive, but second of all, they're available on Microsoft devices. They're available on iPad. They're available on Android devices. So you can get Power BI dashboards no matter who you are and what your role is and what device you use. And so this makes this a very valuable tool. When I talk about interactive, what I mean is that I can do some things like, if we look at, for instance, this example, I have a chooser here, so I can choose the year that I'm viewing. I get a list of the customers. You can see over here, I get a list of my sales team. And then over here, you're going to see that I have a bar chart that shows me in a descending order the amount of purchases that these clients have made from us. So if I wanted to pick a particular salesperson to analyze activity, I could select Sandra, and when I click on Sandra, it's going to automatically redraw everything else that's on this dashboard. So you can see which clients belong to Sandra, and you can see that here. The nice thing about this view is I can see their sales and their cost, and in this case, their margin. And then the other thing that's nice is if I click back, it's going to take me back to right where I started. If I want to select a different year, I can do the very same thing. So Power BI is not only a nice tool in regards to its ability to provide you dashboards, but its ability to read from multiple applications. It doesn't have to be just GP, on multiple devices. And now there is with the next release of Dynamics GP, there will be what's called a content pack that will be focused very specifically on modules in Dynamics GP. So because our time is short, I wanted to make sure we got through those reporting options and give you an opportunity to ask any questions you may have on reporting and inquiry items that I've just covered, or if there's any other questions.
We do have one question. If we don't have access to parts on the navigation list, reporting services, Excel report, should we ask Socius if we have these capabilities?
Sure. I would suggest that would be a discussion you have with a consultant that you might work with. You certainly can reach out to either your account manager or the consultant that you work with on a regular basis, and we can analyze the situation to make sure. There may be situations where you don't see certain things because of security. There also may be things that you don't see because you don't have them installed. So there are a variety of reasons that you may or may not see all of the items there. But certainly, we want to make sure that if you need access to these things, that you certainly can see them.
Awesome. That's the only one.
Okay. Well, I do have one more thing that I skipped over, and I will take just a moment to do this to catch up on it. So I'm going to exit out of here. There's one more Excel tool that I forgot to show you. So what I'm going to do is launch Excel, and we also have what we call analysis cubes for Excel. So I often have done a presentation on choosing the right reporting tool, and this is probably a reason for it, is because there's so many choices, and it depends on who's receiving the information, etc. But let me show you one more thing. If I select on my open Excel spreadsheet here, I can go in and I can actually select data from what's called analysis services. I can point to the server that my GP exists on, and the system will actually then give me these cubes, which actually it acts like a data warehouse. So what I have the ability to do here is I select one of these cubes depending on the data I'm looking for, and then this will allow me to create pivot table type reporting. And so you can see that it's starting to actually pull information. So you'll notice over here that I have a variety of fields that I can choose data from. So as an example, I have extended price. So if I'm doing a sales report, I might want to have the extended price, and I can drop that down here under values. And you'll notice as soon as I do that, it's placing that over here. Now, the other thing that I have here is I also have the quantity sold. So I can show quantity sold here as well. Oops, let me pull it down and then pull that below it. Okay, so now I have the quantity sold and I have the extended price. So the other thing that I might want is I might want to get into some things like who is purchasing this data, who's purchasing this from me. And so what I can do here is under customers, I can select customer names. And let's do this. And so I can put that down here in the rows. And so all of a sudden, wait a minute, let me take that back off. There's a way we can do this so we can actually see the name. Give me one moment. Well, we'll do this for now. Just know that we can even make this more elaborate if we choose to. So we'll just pick customer name, and we'll drop that down here on my rows. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to look at what they've purchased by item class. And so I'm going to pull that down here as well. So all of a sudden, you're able to see who bought what and so forth. And then the last thing we can do is we can do some things like this, where I can actually come in here and maybe I want to pull the year. And I can pick which year. So maybe I want to look at 2016 and 2017. and did I get that? Let me see. So then I need to pull the year into the column. There we go. So now you can see how many I purchased and the dollar values for that. And then lastly, I can filter it, and I can filter it a couple different ways. So I may actually pull this back off, and let's pull this down. I think that's what I wanted. There we go. There's my customer name. And then the last thing I like to do on something like this is then pull the sales territory and make that a filter. So what I can do is I then have the ability to come in here and say I want to look at a particular sales territory. So I can say I want territory 1, and I can pick what I would like there. And so as I do that, it all redraws. So this report is going to give me everything I need from that perspective. All right. So we need to keep moving along. So that's reporting. So what I'm going to move to next is really a little bit of a different approach, and this is more system. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the Dynamics GP web client. And there's a number of reasons you might want the web client. So first of all, this allows you to access Dynamics GP from the web. It eliminates your need to have an install on either a Citrix server or on a desktop. It allows you to access it via a web browser. And so you can see here that we have a web address to get to GP. The other thing that's really important about the web client is that it can be single sign-on. So when you log into your computer, that's the credentials, and it can log you. Then you can log directly into GP without a username and password. It is really good for some new licenses that Dynamics GP offers called self-service licenses. So we're going to talk about workflow in a couple minutes, and this allows someone that does requisitions or enters their time against a project to access GP via a browser and just be able to have limited access to do just those tasks that they need to do. And just like we talked about with Power BI, you can access GP this way through Apple device, iOS, or through Android devices. It works on a variety of different browsers, including Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari, Edge, all of those different browsers. So this is just another option that you have in regards to using GP. We found that a number of our clients really find this to be very useful. And the other thing that's nice is that you can have a mixed environment. So you can have some that access via the web, maybe those self-service users, while others are using it more traditionally. So that's the web client. All right, so now what we're going to do is move into a couple other things. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was more of a just a little nicety, and that is the ability to attach documents and multiple documents through some functionality that continues to improve. So if I bring up a vendor, I now have the ability to attach documents to that vendor. So you can see the paperclip here, and this allows you then to have contracts or anything that applies to interaction that you may have. Now, this is certainly not going to act as a vendor contract manager, but it simply allows you to attach those types of documents and allows you to interface very nicely. We have the ability to highlight, we can preview the document, we can add more documents. So, and this is going to be true throughout the system. And with the release of GP 2018, you're going to actually have these attachments that are available on inquiry windows and other places so that that useful information will be available to you at any time. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about on the system side is workflow. And so there's a variety of different workflows that are available, and they've been being released ever since GP 2013 R2. And so I'm going to jump out real quickly to my other version of GP. So in GP 2013 R2, there was purchase orders, requisitions, time cards, and timesheets. In 2015, there's GL and receivables and payables batches, vendor onboarding approval, employee self-service, and project expenses. In 2015, release 2, payables transactions, which I'll show you an example of. Workflow attachments were added in 2015 R2 as well. And in 2016, they added functionality for reassignments and Word templates. And so and then there's more to come. So one of the real deficits that GP had was that if you use purchase orders, you could only do AP invoices. You couldn't do PO matched invoices through workflow. And in GP 2018, you'll be able to add that. Plus, if you want to create some sort of a approval process for adding new accounts to your general ledger, that's a new workflow that's being added as well. So that's definitely something that will be useful for you. So I'm going to very promptly go through workflow real quickly just to show you how it works, and we won't go all the way through. But in setup, we have some functionality that will allow us to define the rules for the workflow and also allow users to approve those workflows. And we'll talk about licensing as well in this process. So I'm going to go here to workflow under company setup. I'm going to go to workflow maintenance. And what you're going to see is that there are a number of different options. So under financial, sales, purchasing, payroll, etc. I'm going to use the example of purchasing, and then you'll see that there's batch approvals, payables, transaction approvals, purchase orders, requisitions, and vendors. All of these you can define a routing policy so that when, for instance, in payables transaction example, a payables invoice comes in, you can route it for approval, and you won't be able to post the batch or post the transaction until that happens. So I'm going to give you just a brief introduction to that. So here we go. Here's the payables process, and I got a real simple example where I have two departments, and maybe department is my only option here. So I want to send it to department heads for approval. I can also set dollar limits as well, and there are a number of different options. So this is just setting some ground rules about notifications and approver delegation and so forth. So then as we get into the steps, you can see that we can set conditions. So I can say when a field equals accounting that it routes to the accounting department. And you can see that if I click on this arrow, this is where I can define the rules. And I can have multiple iterations. So I can say this and this. If that happens, then it will float this way. So in my case, I just did something really simple to say if this field equals accounting, then we're going to route it to the person responsible for accounting. All right. We can set rules in regards to assignment, so who gets it. You can set time limits. You can set messages, so what the email would look like when an approver is asked to approve a transaction. So you can actually set up a template. This is what the template might look like. You've been assigned a task. Here are the different fields that are going to go in. You can set up a table that shows at the bottom with these fields. And then also, the last thing that's important is I can include attachments so that if I need to have some sort of either a copy of the invoice in this example or some brochure or some spec sheets or whatever it needs to be to get that approval, that's what we can attach. So I'm going to save that. So this is basically all that needs to get done. And then what happens is that when I enter a payables transaction in this example, I can say transaction entry. The system will come up, and you'll notice that this window looks a little different than it maybe does for you today, because I have this gray bar, which is a status bar. I have a submit button. I have an attach option that's new. And so I can go down through here and I can say workflow example. We'll call the batch workflow. I'll pick my vendor. Oops, wrong one, sorry. I'll put in my invoice number and need to be more creative when I do this. And then I'll put in the amount. Now what I can do is I can submit. Now notice this is document 517, so I'm going to submit this document. I have an opportunity to type in some notes and then click submit. And then what will happen is this will then go into workflow based upon the rules that I set as you saw before. All right, so first thing I wanted to show you is now if I go back to that document I just entered, you're going to notice that this transaction now says pending approval. Now, this is an unusual example because I'm actually requesting and approving. That would not be the normal situation. Also, you can see history of the workflow. And so what this will show you is where it is. So I originated it and submitted it. The marketing department doesn't apply because I selected accounting, and now it's pending approval. So you'll have a true audit trail of all of this. Now, I didn't do it, but I could have attached a document and that would flow along with it as well. So now if everything worked the way it was supposed to, then I now have an email here. And when I open up this email, it's going to give me the option it says I've been assigned a task. I can approve, reject, or delegate. I have information based upon how I designed that email. And then I have the ability to click on a hyperlink and it'll send it back through. So ultimately, this is what the workflow in general looks like. All right, so I'm going to go back into GP. And so just a couple other things under system. I wanted to spend a few minutes with you talking about what's called the Professional Service Tools Library. And so, oops, wrong one, sorry about that. Let's go here. And this is actually a tool set that may or may not be installed in your environment, but it's a free tool that's available. All you have to do is download it and get it installed. And this tool allows you to do a variety of things. So in this example, you can see that there are tools around financials, purchasing, sales, payroll, and inventory. And so some examples might be that I want to combine item numbers. I have duplicate item numbers in my inventory. And so in that case, what I can do is select item number combiner. I can click next. I have a user logged in, so I can't go any further. And it'll actually walk me through the process. Actually, I think I can do something here that will allow me to go past that. Let's do this. Okay, so now that I'm out of my other users out of GP, and then I can go back here, and now let's do this, and we click next, and it'll ask me the item number, and it'll ask me the what are we combining it into. So this is a combiner situation. Notice that there's also an import button, so that if I had a CSV file, I could actually import a group of items that I'm combining into other items. So column A may be the original, column B may be the destination. And then you just click convert and it runs it for you. And then it will also change all of your historical records and combine everything into that one item in this example. But we can do this for account numbers in your chart, for customers, for vendors, etc. So that is what I wanted to cover from a system perspective. Lindsay, are there any questions out there?
There's one. Do I have permission to access the OLAP cubes in GP?
I think there's a couple things. If you're talking about the analysis cubes, there's some extra installation that has to happen for that to be functional. So I would say that if it's installed, then you should be able to, depending on how it was designed. If you don't, you have to do the installation and then assign users and their access to it. I hope that answered the question.
All right, well, that's the one more. Do individuals need to be GP users in order for them to be assigned in a workflow?
No, and I'm glad that question came up. So the answer is no. So there's a couple things. If I'm a requisitioner, then I can, or if I'm entering time against a project, I can actually be what's called a self-service license of GP, which is a really low-cost, single-function license. If I'm an approver, but not a requester on any of this, then I can just use my email to do the approval process, and if everybody attaches and sends the proper information, then I don't have to have a license at all. So now, in regards to the example I showed around payables management, that payables management workflow would require that somebody enter that transaction into payables, which does require a full license. But if I'm approving the invoice, not entering the invoice, then I don't have to have a license at all.
Awesome. Those are the only two right now.
Okay, very good. All right, so now we just have a few other things that I wanted to cover. We're going to go into the financial side. And so some of this we've covered with you before, but we think is just really important. So I have a spreadsheet that is simply a journal entry. And I know in my experience working with clients with GP, many of you will create journal entries in GP and then integrate them using Integration Manager or some other tool. And so now what we have the ability to do is we actually can enter a journal entry and we can copy and paste directly out of out of Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and enter this this transaction. And my screen looks a little different. I have a third-party product loaded here, so don't be alarmed. And now what I can do, you'll notice that there's now a paste button up here. I can click paste, and that will automatically drop that into my journal entry. So copying and pasting from Excel can be a really big time saver. This can be especially useful, and we have a number of clients that use it for payroll. So they may get a file from their payroll provider that is in Excel, and then what we can do, and that might be a 50 or 100 or 200 line journal entry, and if that's the case, then this makes it really nice to be able to just do a copy paste and drop it right into your general ledger to post. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. The next function I wanted to talk about was the ability to do combining and modifying of vendors and customers. And I'm just going to show an example on the vendor side. So you'll notice this used to be part of the professional service tools library, and it has since been moved into the utilities sections for both payables and receivables. So I selected purchasing. I now select vendor combiner and modifier. You'll notice here that I have combiner, I have modifier. So if I wanted to do a combine, what I would do is I would pick my, say I'm going to take auto financing, and I'm going to combine them with attractive telephone. I know this one makes no sense. But at this point, I could actually click process, and all of the activity that sits in auto finance would become a part of the other vendor. Now, you can do this in bulk if you choose to. So what I have the ability to do is I have the ability to import a list of vendors. I can bring in the column A being the source, column B being the destination. I click process and it will change that for us. And then I'm gonna cancel this one, but I'm gonna show you then on the modify side what I can do. And by the way, I would bet that everyone on the phone that uses accounts payable probably has at least one duplicate vendor. I may be wrong, but the combiner is a great tool to eliminate duplicates. And so that's something to think about. But if I want to modify is going to be used for a different reason. Modify might be used if I'm going to change the name of a company and I want to change their vendor ID. And so what I can do is say I want to be moved from AllinOne to ABCD EFG 0001, and then and this destination has to be found. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to make that the modifier. Sorry, got ahead of myself. Let's start that over. Let's do it as a modifier, and then we'll do AllinOne. And now we can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 0001. And so now what that'll do, this vendor doesn't even exist, but it's going to relabel it from here to here based upon this process. So if you're going through and maybe you're renumbering your vendors to be to provide you better reporting capabilities, that type of thing, then that can come in really handy for you. All right, so moving along here, I wanted to then next spend some time with posting accounts. And so from a posting account perspective, there are a variety of things that you need to think about. So you can define default posting accounts. So one of the places that we can do that is under our administration. And then under setup, there's an option called posting. And this is where we can define all of the posting accounts for our modules at large. So this is for all of them, but if I wanted to isolate just sales, then these are all the accounts that need to be assigned in sales. So you got cash, receivables, cost of goods sold, credit memos, debit memos, all of those different things. And then if I looked at financial, then this is more around multi-currency and revaluation, etc. So each module is going to have a set of those individual accounts that you need to define. So this is kind of like the last resort right here. This is where if you don't have them set up elsewhere, this is where it goes. Now, let's use purchasing as an example. If I'm in purchasing, then I have the ability to define at the vendor level, I can define accounts. So you can see I can set all of these posting accounts. I also have the ability to set it at the class level. And so you can see I can set accounts here. So if I add a new vendor and add them to a class, it will automatically assign them these default posting accounts. And so on the sales side, if we set up receivables, then on the sales side, we can say at the customer level, we have the ability to set up accounts. All right, we can also assign those at the class level. And there's your accounts. And then if you're using sales order processing, one of the things that's interesting is in inventory, or actually, I'm sorry, in sales, then under the sales order processing module, you can see that you can tell the system that I want to pull my posting accounts from either the item or the customer. So you can define sales accounts, you can define cost of goods sold accounts, inventory accounts, and they can all be determined from either sales or inventory. And so, and I have all this documented, and we'll make sure that you get a slide deck that shows you all of this. And then lastly, project accounting, and I'm just going to talk to this, but in project accounting, you have the ability to define posting accounts at a contract level, at a project level, or at a cost category level. And so I detail that in all of the different I detail that with all the different module groups. There's a couple other things I want to keep moving on this, is that we have the ability to track, and I'm going to skip some of these that we'll cover later, but in the general ledger, I'm sorry, yeah, when it comes to reprinting posting journals, we have some capability there, both the payables, receivables, and general ledger and inventory. So you can see that you can reprint any posting journal, and you can see here that we got the payables transactions, we got the payments, we got the GL distribution, all of these different open transactions, voided, everything. And so you can, if you ever need to reprint a posting journal, each one of the modules will have under reports a section called posting journals, and you can reprint any of those. Okay. Also, one thing that's often a big issue for people is use tax. And so I don't know if any of you ever run into issues with use tax, but we have the ability to set up the system so that it will allow you to track use tax. It's kind of a neat little trick. So what you can do is, first of all, if we start off in administration and we go to setup and company, and then company again, under the options section, there is a section down here that says enable reverse charge taxes. Because a lot of times what's going to happen is a vendor is going to issue you an invoice, and they're not charging you sales tax because you're in Ohio as an example, and they're in Texas. And so, but you're obligated for taxes, and so therefore we need to track use tax. So what we can do in that example is in our back to our company setup. So back to administration, and then what we can do is we can set up tax details, and under the tax details we can set up, I'll show you a couple examples I did. So we got Illinois tax expense. I'll show you that, and you'll notice that it's charging tax, and I don't know if this is correct, but it's 6%. And then we have Illinois tax payable, which is a minus 6%. So ultimately, these kind of counteract each other. So then what we can do is we can create a tax schedule that is called Illinois tax. Let's see if I can, oh, I'm sorry, hang on. Let's pull it out. Called Illinois. Let me make sure I got that right. There we go, Illinois use tax, and it includes those. So what happens is you don't want the transaction that you send through payables to include tax because you weren't charged it, but what you want to be able to do is track and report upon what you're going to owe. And so this allows you to do that by creating these two tax schedules. So when you enter a payables transaction, it will be plus 6%, minus 6%, and therefore it'll charge just the invoice. It'll record just the invoice amount, but yet you'll have reporting that you can do for the use tax. Okay. So one other thing that I wanted to cover, and then we'll move on, is I wanted to cover, for those of you that might be using Payroll, they've added some new functionality that will make your life a lot easier. They've allowed you to set up payroll posting accounts. And so what's nice here is it's a much simpler way than what you had before. So if I want to go in and select gross pay, I can edit. And I got a very simple way of setting up for this department, for this position, for this code, it goes to this GL account. So that really allows you to very easily update your posting accounts for payroll. So with that, we have one more section left, and I think we're going to be okay to get everything finished. Are there any questions in regards to the financials area.
Yes. Is the Excel copy-paste function available in 2015 R2?
Yes.
Okay. And is the Excel copy-paste only for journal entries or bank transaction journal entries as well?
I wish it was for more, but it is just a journal entry tool at this point.
And last question.
Okay.
Vendor combiner and modifier, does it have to be installed in GP or no?
No, that's different. It used to be part of the professional service tools library, which had to be installed separately. It's now with the more current versions. I guess my answer should be it depends on what version you're on, but I would say with 15 and 16, it's included. So it's just part of your payables and receivables modules.
Okay, awesome. We are good to go.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. So the next things I wanted to cover are more related to distribution. And really, they're more related to your ability to get to information. So one thing that they added in 2015 on the purchasing side was what's called an all-in-one viewer. And so what this allows us to do is it allows us to select this little option up here at the top. And with this all-in-one viewer, I can click on a vendor and it will show me purchase orders, receipts of goods and services, corresponding invoices, payments, and returns. And if any of them are related, so if you were to select this, then it would show you any transactions related to that. Now, in this case, I don't have a good example, but if there was a purchase order that led to 2 receipts, which led to 3 invoices, which led to 2 payments, and then there was a return, and I selected that PO, it's going to show me the entire audit trail and link them all together. And then on the sales side, we're going to have the same option. So when I pick up a customer, and then there's an all-in-one viewer, and you'll see that there is, and this is probably not a good example. Let me bring up a different customer. Then you can see that there's quotes and orders and invoices and cash receipts and credit and returns. And so I could click on this order and it would then, and this was probably not a good choice, but somewhere along the line, this would show me anything that ties to the next level down so that you could see everything that's related to that transaction. And this also exists for inventory. And so all of these things allow you to kind of work it all together and get a better view of the overall activity that is available for a customer or for a vendor or for an item all in one view. That really is the concept. People have been kind of asking for that for a really long time. And so what that leads me to say is if you have things that you would like to see in GP, the more you ask and the more people who ask, the more a chance that there will be additional functionality added. So I'm going to, there are a few more that are throughout this, presentation. We couldn't get to all of them in an hour, but I wanted to just do this real quickly. I wanted to then go down here to the bottom and just talk about a couple things that are coming. So almost there. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that you're aware of as a GP user, that there is a lot of activity still going on. And so notice the function here. It says, so GP 2018 is going to be released in December of this year. Then there will be an add-on to that sometime probably about a year from there. And then another one in about a year. So the cycle today is about once a year there'll be new feature functionality. So I just wanted to give you a few things that I think you'll probably be able to leverage moving forward. And there is documentation out now from Microsoft about some of the new features in GP 2018. You're going to be able to do document attachments across all inquiry windows, and before you weren't. You could only do it on certain master records. You'll be able to show notes on inquiry windows. Workflow, they're going to add emails, so reminder emails. If you're using GP for requisitions, you'll now be able to print those requisitions. Before you could not. One thing that they're adding also on the payable side is you're going to be able to set up a vendor so that they get one check per invoice rather than the way that it's out of the box is one check. Actually, it's one check per invoice is a new setting. It's always been one check per vendor before. They've added the new GL account workflow, and also there's going to be Power BI content pack we talked about when we were looking at Power BI. So I know I rushed through all of this. We had an hour, and there's a lot to talk about, but hopefully this has been useful. I want to make sure that if you have any questions that you ask them now.
All right. One final question that came in. I am on 2015 R2. Can I only find Smart List Builder, or can I access Smart List Designer?
If you have Smart List Builder, you cannot access Smart List Designer. And really, if you're using Smart List Builder, you don't need Smart List Designer because Smart List Builder does everything Smart List Designer does plus. So Smart List Designer, if you're using it, would be if you don't have Smart List Builder.
And is the web client available in 2015 R2?
Yes. 2015, I believe, is when the new version of the web client came out. It's actually been available for several versions, but it's new and improved. I think it was in 2015. Yes, it definitely has been available for some time.
All right, and with that, I think we will stop for questions. If we didn't get them answered, we will definitely reach out afterwards so we don't go over by too much. But thanks again for joining us, everyone, today. Just a couple of things before we end. Our next GP webinar is next Tuesday, the 27th. GP to the cloud. We will have that one from 1 to 2, and then on October 17th, we will have budgeting and forecasting with Dynamics GP. And then later in October, we will have new 1099 requirements and adherence with Dynamics GP. And once again, you can find our webinar series on our website at socius1.com/events. And with that, Jeff's contact is on the screen there, so reach out to him if you have questions. And thanks everyone for joining us today.